I'm going to talk about what was, without a doubt, the toughest 6 months of my career, 20 plus year career. And as Adam mentioned, through a cyber breach and obviously the COVID pandemic. So in November of 2019, when news of COVID-19 began to emerge, everyone was watching and waiting. At Cognizant, we were watching and waiting as well. Cognizant is a pretty large company. We have about 280,000 associates, 650 plus security professionals, and security centers all over the world. Cognizant generates over 16 billion in annual revenue. So in fact, when I was initially considering Cognizant, I was looking at their 5-year growth statistics. Needless to say, it was very impressive, as you can see on the screen.
Hey Casey, we're not seeing your presentation.
You're not.
No. You can share your screen.
How about now?
Excellent. Thanks, Casey.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so give me 1 second here. All right, so in November of 2019, when news of COVID began to emerge, everyone was watching, including us, obviously, at Cognizant. As I mentioned previously, I think you heard but couldn't see, it's a pretty large company, about 280,000 associates all over the world, 650 plus security professionals, and we have security centers and staff in about 18 different countries. And as I said, Cognizant generates over 16 billion in annual revenue. And this, obviously, this tremendous growth in 5 years was one of the main drivers of me accepting a role with Cognizant as Chief Delivery Security Officer. Cognizant provides services for top organizations around the world, 30 of the top 30 global pharma, 27 of the top 30 North America and EU banks, 10 of 10, the top 10 global media. So we have clients, we have about 3,000 clients and almost all of the Fortune 500. So we were watching because of large numbers of those 280,000 associates come down with COVID. We may not be able to serve our clients. And ultimately, like so many others, we lose our business. And so we watch. It's moments like these where your character is tested the greatest. This is going to be a tremendous amount of work. I was thinking to myself, I'm going to be working around the clock for the next 3 months. Do I really have what it takes? It was very tough times. And I was thinking about my team as well, obviously. The answer to that question will be determined not by what you do in that moment, but what you have done in all of the moments before. "10 to 30 miles of incredible obstacles in one day. Race day is long and grueling. By the time I'm finished, I'm exhausted and my body has physically been put through the test. The experience and results of that one day isn't determined here. Instead, the experience and results of that day is determined here. Every day I have a choice. When that alarm goes off, do I hit snooze? Or do I get up and head to the gym? How you respond when it counts is built on the habits you develop when it doesn't. In your work, do you show up every day on time, ready to give your best? Or are you a few minutes late because the boss doesn't seem to notice? Do you regularly leave a few minutes early so you can beat traffic? Or do you stay until the job is done? This begins with this. How well you respond in a crisis situation is built upon your everyday. Your now matters. So as we see this COVID crisis heading our way, we know we have to move 200,000 people home in India, 200,000 people. And we have to move them fast. But this isn't so easy. In moving 200,000 people home, we need to supply over half of them with laptops. These are people who work in our security operations centers where we have computers and monitors and systems in place for them to do their job. But now we have to provide all of this for people in their homes, all the while ensuring security measures are in place to keep data from being breached. And all of this in the middle of a country who is typically shoulder to shoulder and now has a no travel ban. This is huge as the American public is beginning to hear about the COVID crisis. Cognizant is already in the middle of it. So what did we do? We moved people home. From January to March, our teams worked around the clock, procuring 100,000 laptops. You have to remember every other company or a lot of other companies were also trying to do the same thing. Very difficult, procuring 100,000 laptops, ensuring those laptops were secure, working with Indian officials to get packages out to our employees. We had to work with the police. Nobody was allowed on the streets. In the back of my mind constantly was, what if a significant number of our associates in India comes down with COVID? Frankly, our company doesn't exist anymore. How are we going to provide adequate security? Is our team able to effectively work remotely, including the ability to monitor, analyze, and respond to cyber attacks? Can the organization sustain such a huge financial hit? Personally, I was thinking, how am I going to stay in shape physically as the gym is closed? If I'm healthy physically, I'm stronger mentally and ultimately more effective. And of course, my poor dog Vinny is not getting the attention or exercise he deserves. There's my boy Vinny. So after 3 months of nonstop engagement, exhausting 24/7, the entire team, we came out on the other side. Our associates are home, their connections are secure, and our clients are being served. We were exhausted. Now I can start enjoying my new residence in the great state of Florida, in which I've only lived a year. Me and my buddies on the boat. And now I can start providing relief and time off for some of the folks who worked 24/7 over the last 3 months. Now I can start to really honor and recognize individuals who were so vital in our success. I felt a great sense of team accomplishment. And Vinny, my boy Vinny, gets my time and attention. What we didn't know is that we weren't finished with the race. We had just come off 3 months of 24/7 work. We were exhausted. And I get the news. Cognizant is hit with ransomware. In the back of my head, if I'm honest, there were nagging doubts. How am I going to keep the team engaged, focused, while also ensuring they rest, considering they had all worked an endless number of hours over the last 3 months? How am I going to get through this without losing a large portion of my team due to burnout? Are my boss and I going to survive this incident and keep our jobs? Should I pick up my networking even though all this chaos is taking place? I moved to Florida and I've hardly been out of my house to enjoy it. I even had a new boat and took one of our incident calls from it as I was dying to get out on it. And of course, my poor boy, Vinny. In these Spartan races for hours straight, it's one obstacle after another. In one race in particular, I was heading towards an obstacle, and I watched a teammate of mine run through a group of hanging shock wires. Yes, shock wires. And then he fell face first into the mud. What was that? I didn't know. I just watched him then get up and stumble towards the next obstacle. I thought to myself, he must have slipped. I'll be more careful. And into the wires I went. The next thing I know, I'll give you a moment to see it. Not the bald guy running in the foreground. Look down. Yep, that's me, face planted in the mud. I'd hit a live electrical wire and it knocked me out cold. I fell face first into the mud. In that moment, I wondered to myself, what am I even doing here? I'd set out to accomplish a goal. For months, I'd trained 6 days a week, preparing my body and my mind for both obstacles and endurance. And here I am, face down in the mud. But there was no way I was giving up now. I had to get up and keep moving. People were counting on me. In the same way I'd trained for these races day after day, week after week, month after month, I'd been preparing myself for the next obstacle in my work life. In the midst of this breach, there was no way I was going to give up now. I just kept thinking about Angela Duckworth's book, Grit. Grit is hanging in there when it's easy to quit. It is fairly easy to find a new job in security when you've been working in it for a while. Working 3 months straight without a weekend off every single day got old. And they were not short days either. I mean, I like to work hard, play hard mantra, but this was simply work hard. I had a choice to make: dig deep and move forward, or quit. Jim Collins says, greatness is not a function of circumstance. Greatness, it turns out, is largely a matter of conscious choice and discipline. Greatness moves forward. It doesn't quit. And we didn't either. Here's what we did. As excited as I wanted to get, I had to tell myself to relax and focus. We had a job to do. In order to focus, I had to ask myself a series of questions. Why are we here? What is the purpose of our department as it relates to this incident? How do we measure success? What are the desired results I want to see? What should our goals be during this very difficult time? And the whole while I kept thinking, although this is going to be tough, this is awesome. Truly awesome. Who can say they did what we were about to do? Jump from a pandemic to a major incident. A great, unique experience. Behind every great achievement is a story of discipline, sacrifice, etc. This is going to be a great achievement, and I am willing to pay the price. Pain is only temporary. The benefits last forever. Additionally, there is no way I'm going to leave my team behind. We were in this together. So how did we handle a breach? The priority of any response is containment, i.e. stop the bleeding. What was the infection vector? Quickly identify that and mitigate. Until that happens, you always have the risk of losing data or availability of data, such as in the ransomware case. Some companies get ahead of themselves and start recovering systems, start mobilizing communications and other resources before they have a real handle on the damage and its prevalence persistence. For example, are these other networks computers safe? Did they encrypt our data? Or did they steal a copy and then encrypt the data? Whose credentials were compromised? Are we sure we know? Some companies get hit with the same malware multiple times and their ransomware payments get progressively more demanding. Here is where a prudent IR plan comes into play. Various threats and incident scenarios should have been modeled, and the corresponding response mitigation steps should be outlined, along with a RACI for all key steps. RACI, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. After the infection vector is determined and mitigated, where else in your organization may you have similar vulnerabilities? Many companies fail to ask themselves, what was the people, process, technology, and cultural norms that enabled this to happen? This is especially true if the cybersecurity function and aspects of IT are federated. These other organizations could benefit from the lessons learned of this IR, incident response. Are you sure they are out of your network? How do you communicate and ensure your employees are extra vigilant? Some companies fail to put in place a diligent checklist that has some independent QA aspects to design, build, test, QA, and then deploy. This is where threat vector frameworks such as the MITRE framework and those of the IR firms can be of immense value. Leverage the great work done by those who've come before us. One idea is to appoint the diligence liaison officer among the frontline staff. They'd often rather hear this reminder from a peer than a boss. Then use your own gamified internal social engineering systems to test, educate, and support your staff during these very tense times. Whenever a significant security incident occurs, you must be prepared as a leader to quickly create a schedule. People tend to work 24/7 and will not stop unless you define a schedule and let them know it is okay to sleep. People want to help. I've seen it in my 20 years. They will work nonstop until they're ineffective. Most companies do not intentionally create the culture that says it's okay to take a break and to intentionally note that we are all in this together. We recognize heroes, but a respond and recover scenario such as this is truly a team sport. And frankly, it typically takes weeks, if not months. Creating a schedule results in a more effective response over the long haul because it provides the cadence of when and how people should work. Time, location, key activities, etc., and when to take some downtime. There is also the value to customers by letting them know what's going on according to a schedule. You often ask for forgiveness that information flow is not instantaneous, but most customers are reasonable and know that we must give the frontline response team time and focus. Seek assistance. In a significant incident, you know you will need outside assistance from an incident response firm. You also typically need help from outside counsel. Many companies try to immediately respond, shutting machines down, putting a gag order on staff, and to protect their reputation, and by doing so, hinder the response team's effectiveness. A lot of times I've seen this happen and evidence is destroyed. People start modifying files and timestamps are altered. They don't pause and follow a sound critical thinking process, getting their IR plan dusted off in work and creating the environment for success. Doctors don't rush into surgery without diagnosis, trained staff, etc. Even in emergencies, they've learned to follow a protocol after extensive training. The benefits of seeking outside assistance: you get additional technical skill, special tools, experience in like-kind events. There is almost always so much work to do that external services are required. Who do you turn to for outside counsel? This is an area of specialty that many in-house counsels lack, and you only get one chance to get this part right. Indemnifications, working with law enforcement on a global scale, contract reviews, privacy notifications. Use an incident response plan. Hopefully you've not only created an IR plan, but you have also tested it. And I'm happy to report that we had tested it actually with the board before the incident. It's always valuable to pull out the plan and have it at the ready for reference. IR plans are valuable, especially ones that contain simple checklists and contact lists for public relations, legal, etc. Most companies do not even have an IR plan, much less a well-rehearsed one. They also don't have a predefined general in the battlefield who will take command of the troops in the event of an incident. It's important to have an IR on the ready because the response effort can become chaotic, and having a due diligence set of tasks, checklist, roles, etc., help the team focus and then be prepared to more deftly handle the unknown unknowns when they inevitably arise. Who needs to know about the IR plan? The same people that need to know of the company's disaster recovery plan. Major functional leaders, IT, legal, HR, but also the go-to external partners, cybersecurity insurance holders, IR firms, external counsel, boards, and possibly an external PR firm. Best kept in multiple places so that in the event files are encrypted, you can still access it. Separate document management sites, have a physical copy. How do you test an IR plan? There are a variety of testing protocols to be done. At the most basic is a verbal walkthrough called a tabletop exercise. That rehearses various threat scenarios with key leaders around the table, virtually, for a couple of hours. At the other end of the scale, very mature, sophisticated, and capable firms use cyber ranges in which to conduct red team, blue team exercises to run through scenarios over several days. This is a very intense and rewarding experience. Prepare to answer the media. You must prepare for internal and external communications. You don't have much time. You need to be prepared and don't want the media contacting you and you haven't thought about your response. Same with your employee workforce. Most companies fail to gather the right people, critical thinkers, various perspectives, specialists, IR firms that have been through this before and role play sufficiently to get their game plan together. They also need to give conscious thought to first and second order intended and unintended consequences. If the media contacts you before you have thought about your response, remember that you are under no obligation to answer the call or respond to their questions. In fact, one of the first lessons of public relations is to tell them what you want to say. You do not have to answer the question. Sometimes best to have a non-answer ready, such as "Thank you for your inquiry. Acme Incorporated is proud to provide world-class products and services. Our focus right now is on our customers and our next generation of services to help drive their businesses forward." Have a point of contact that owns this role and make sure they know it. Role play and preparation, and have go-to people he, she can leverage in confidence during stressful times such as this. Prepare to answer clients. What is your message to the thousands of clients who are demanding answers? Also, they want to know technical specifics so they can use that information to protect their organizations. What can you share? If you share some indicators of compromise, that could end up jeopardizing your response. Some people think the person hearing the message knows their intent, their audience, etc. They in all likelihood do not, and they care not. They want some pithy quote for self-gratification. Remember that the message, the what, matters as much as the mode, the how, and the timing when. Always be humble. Tell how you're thinking about it, and do not box yourself in with too many specifics, even though that's what many audiences crave. Don't cave to the crave. The bad guys can be surprised by how you discovered their actions, responded to their attack, etc. Don't make them even more formidable adversaries or antagonize them any more than is absolutely necessary. You do not know the depths someone without a moral compass will dive. So what did we learn along the way? If you want something, ask for it. Most people can't climb a 12-foot wall without help. Many times people are afraid to ask for the help or information they need. In life, in work, in play. In this case, I had to ask for some very confidential information that I could share with my team. I needed this information because my team was on the front line with clients 24/7. For us to do our job well, we needed information that would reduce client anxiety and provide assurance to them. Give us too much information and our clients may get it, and that would force a loss of trust. Ask for help on a project. Ask for help with your career. Ask for someone to be your mentor. Ask for feedback early. I asked our clients for feedback and modified accordingly. Most people will not voluntarily give you feedback. You must ask for it. When you meet with your boss or your professor, ask how you are doing. What could you be doing better? And listen to that feedback and then take action. And one of the things on feedback that has worked in my career, a lot of times people are hesitant to give critical feedback. I will ask, what are other people saying about me? And typically whatever you hear is what they're thinking, but it makes it feel better that it's not coming directly from them. Whether it be in your personal life or your professional life, commit to continuous improvement. Even though we contained the incident and declared victory, this cannot happen again. We can't rest. We should also be doing this throughout your days. You should also be doing this throughout your days. How can I provide more value to people? How can I make this better? Be persistent. Persistence or grit is probably the single most common denominator for success. Don't give up. Believe me, I suspect many of the folks on the team considered throwing in the towel and moving on. What I do know is that because they were persistent, we succeeded as a company and they developed as security professionals. And with that, that's it, Adam.
Thanks, Casey. Really appreciate that. I got to admit, when I first saw that picture, I did not recognize that was you that had gone face down. What happens in your mind between when you get hit by a shock and you wake up in the water in the next second?
Yeah, to be honest, I was very out of it. I just remember thinking I got to get through the rest of these wires because I was in the middle of it.
Because you don't know which one's hot, do you?
Well, yeah, so I don't know if this is true, but I've been told that in those wires, there's one in every event that has 10,000 volts. And apparently me and the guy I work with both found the 10,000 volt wire.
Oh,
So, when I got up, I was thinking, I hope that was right and I can get through the rest of these. And I did fine, small little shocks, but nothing like the 10,000 volt one.
Casey, what was the cadence like? How often were you communicating with your clients? And did you set up conference calls with all of those you're working with or wait for them to reach out to you? How did that happen?
We did. So we had calls every day, all day, weekends, etc. I am very thankful. I was creating the BISO organization, Business Information Security Officer. So I had just hired from Deloitte, PwC, some very, very sharp folks. And they had only been with the company a couple months, but they really helped. We had a flow of information. Once we got going, we got into a good cadence. And basically, I mean, clients, if they asked for a call, we basically tried to make it happen. Early on, we struggled with, rightfully so. Leadership's very careful to share information when something like this happens. So in the beginning, we were getting beat up by clients significantly because we wanted to make sure whatever we were communicating was accurate, and we didn't have to take it back and then lose trust. So in the beginning, we were, sitting in front of clients and they're beating us up and we don't have a whole lot to share. That got much better. We got into a cadence, and based on all indications from clients and feedback, they were extremely happy with the transparency.
I can only guess that you must have had a lot of clients that wanted to disconnect from your security services, and then you had to earn their trust. You had to earn the confidence back. What was that process like?
Yeah, we did. So as a matter of fact, we had a large portion, and not security services, but we provide services, right? So a lot of the and security services, but a lot of folks did disconnect. And so these calls and providing real information and real updates back to the clients, gaining their assurance, basically everyone reconnected in a couple weeks. And
That's
not everybody
incredible.
disconnected, but because of the BISO group, I mean that I truly believe the assurance they provided, the details they provided, helped. And at the end of the day, if we're connected, we're making money. If we're not, we're not.
Ah, sorry, I wasn't sharing my screen, so we could see each other as panelists here. Um, anyway, Casey, the other thing I want to ask you about is you have a large team within Cognizant. You have deeply technical folks that are overseas. You've got a lot of client-facing folks overseas. How did you internally decide, quote unquote, what the story was, what the next actions were? What was that like internally?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you have a core team, right, made up of legal, obviously security, public relations, and we were, as a leadership team, we were on calls. It was clearly not, none of the decisions were made by a single group. So there was just, I mean, incidents, you're working 24/7, not just with your team, but with the leadership team to decide, okay, what do we communicate? How do we communicate it? How do we ensure it's privileged? And you have to control the message, because at the end of the day, if you have, the security community is a pretty tight community. If you're telling one CISO one thing and you're telling another CISO another thing, and those two
Trouble.
those two talk later that night, I mean, they're going to lose all confidence in what you're doing.
So there's a lot of turnover in the security industry. Salaries are still going up. There's a tremendous demand for cybersecurity talent. What happened with your staff, say over the last 10 months, if you could say the percentage of turnover or lack thereof? What was that like?
So we've actually done well, and I think part of that was leadership. And when I say that, it goes back to, in the presentation, when you're working 24/7, you have a pandemic, then you have a major breach. Frankly, you just want to be mean. You haven't rested. As a leader, you're tired, and it's easy if you don't have emotional intelligence and self-awareness to just be mean to your team, because you're just stressed out. It's kind of human nature. So I think leadership remained very calm. considering the circumstances. And another thing the company has done, and this was more around COVID, but it's really neat and it's excited me, is they introduced summer hours. So basically, you can work 9 days in 2 weeks instead of 10, and they just extended that. I got an email today, and then they've also they've implemented a new program where some people, depending on circumstances, can flex or work less than 40 hours. So I think the company at the highest levels is realizing in this crazy world we live in right now, people are working, they've got kids running around, they're trying to take care of. The company is really doing some amazing things for just to, employee morale and engagement.
Well, as I tell my boss, I get to work late, but I make up for it by leaving early. But he doesn't like that too much. Casey, when you're developing your communication with your customers, right? It's not just what you say, it's what you hear from them, and both body language and the empathy and stuff. Were you on live video calls with both your team and the clients on a pretty regular basis to see the anxiety and the stress in them and how you would adapt as a leader?
Absolutely. I mean, they were all, frankly, they were almost, I'd say 95% were on video, and it was every day. And I'm a big believer in, I call it do-say ratio. So I was even very tired, I would take notes of the entire call. And if we said we were going to do something, I made sure we did it. And that, when you start doing that, people start believing in you, they trust you, and you provide that assurance. But that gets hard when you're exhausted. I mean, even taking notes, and following up, that goes back to the grit part and being persistent.
Within Cognizant, who owns the incident response plan? Is it owned by, like, the IT have their own security team, or is it owned by the client facing security services?
So the IR response plan is owned by corporate security. I'm delivery security, so corporate security owns it. And then there's a much bigger overall crisis management plan owned by physical security.
Okay. And your team in India, right? I've been to India many times and literally driven east to west, north to south across India. Love the place, but you're right, it's a pretty crowded, and there's not the kind of infrastructure you would expect, especially state to state to state. Your team goes home. How did you even get them a laptop, and how did you know they would have sufficient internet connection to even still do their job at home?
Yeah, so well, the laptops I didn't handle getting them, but it happened, right? But as far as internet connection, yes. So for my team, I said it was fine because some people may not know, but the internet connections in India, unless you're one of the very wealthy, it's very spotty. So immediately I asked everyone to get one of the air cards. So we had, they would have internet at home, but they also had an air card. So we approved that. And to this day, I think we're still paying it. I mean, we're going to cut it probably soon, but we had, make sure we had that redundancy.
So most of your staff there, Chennai, Bangalore, et cetera, so they had fairly good 4G or LTE coverage?
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, I will say a lot of times we'll cut the video because, video messes with the connection or, the experience. So frequently we would cut video, but they have the redundancy, and we were checking in with all teams. We would check on people. I was actually tracking, without getting into individual health information, tracking COVID, who has it, who doesn't, and kind of looking at those trends. And as a company, you can imagine, after something like this, we are really looking at, we have a very heavy presence in India. So if our worst case scenario played out, India, is severely infected, our company is in trouble. So we're looking at that.
Casey, earlier in your presentation, you'd mentioned about the critical thinking skills to think about what was the unintended consequence and the intended consequence. Is this what I wanted to happen? What surprised you the most that is an unintended consequence that was good? You're like, I hadn't thought about this, but yeah, that ended up pretty good for us.
Well, I'll tell you, and I mentioned it briefly earlier. I'm building this BISO organization at the time, and it's pretty early on. Those new hires learned more in those 4, 5, 6 months than they would have in 3 years, because they were on phone. I mean, they were forced to Now they have relationships with the clients. I mean, they talk to them every day. So, you know, when you talk to people over and over, you develop a relationship. So those relationships are much stronger, both externally with our clients and internally. And the other consequence is the organization I was building. You know, when you're first building an organization, you're thinking, how do I show the value? And we clearly showed tremendous value by being client facing and you know, providing that assurance to the clients.
But what do you, if you could point to one or two things, we know you guys worked hard, you're an industry leading firm in security. What are the one or two things you go, looking back, I wish we had done this a little differently, a little bit better?
Yeah, there's two things. One is, and it's funny, I had a lessons learned call earlier today. So it's kind of top of mind. The two biggest for me and my organization was, how do we have a better defined process for information flow down to my organization? Because we're talking to the clients. You know, if all the leaders, the top leaders have the information, but none of it gets to us, you know, like I said, we get beat up. So that's something we got to work on. And then the other is just creating a standard script that and process every day. This is our message to clients. So all the BSOs out there, whoever, whatever client you're talking to, here's the script. And it should change every day because we were working around the clock. So we had a frequently asked question sheets that we created. But at the end of the day, it would have been better to have something that everybody was working off the same script.
Casey, there's a question that given the cultural differences, how do you ensure that the leadership message from the top of the house makes it to the frontline employees, especially in India, in a way that preserves the tone, especially in a pandemic?
So, I'm sorry, Adam, say that one more time.
How did you ensure that leadership message that you and the others would make, how would it get down to the frontline leaders in India in a way that preserves the tone of the message?
Well, I mean, what I can say is our CEO has done a tremendous job on just communication. So they frequently post, they call them leadership toolkits, and we have SLT meetings. And so they basically, as a leader, they give me information that I can basically read off to my team in team meetings. And subsequently, I give those leadership toolkits to my leaders as well, and on down the organization. And this CEO, I mean, that's the biggest difference is he communicates a lot and makes sure that messages get out and drives that, you know, we have to communicate with our employees. And, you know, every organization, I've worked in all Fortune 50 organizations before Cognizant, and in every employee engagement survey, almost always one of the top areas of improvement is communications. And so that's different at Cognizant, that because of the new CEO.
Cool. And Casey, how are you doing? How did you take care of yourself through this? Did you find a way to get the regular exercise and vent, the cathartic relief to vent, but just take care of yourself, get some quiet time and pray and just be yourself?
I did. You know, I think, you know, I mentioned it before, I think self-awareness is so important. And, you know, I'm definitely a type A, push. But knowing when I'm not treating people the way I should be, I need to turn it off. And I remember one night, I mean, I think I went to bed at 7 p.m. And so I just told my boss, I'm tapping out. Like, I have to sleep. And you know, like I said, everybody, I've seen it in all my years, everybody wants to they don't want to quit. They want to work nonstop. And then that works for a very short period of time. And then you see people making mistakes and almost like they're drunk. And so as a leader, you have to say, I'm checking out. Because what happens is if as a leader, you work 24/7, they're going to follow and do the same. And
yeah, I remember reading a study one time that after a week, if you normally need 7 hours of sleep, but you only get 6 after a week, that's equivalent of going to work with a beer. The second hour is like 2 beers and 3. So legally, by losing 2 or 3 hours a night sleep after 3 to 5 days, you are going home. They say punch drunk. We think we're heroes, and we're just not. You have to. It's like sleep is when memory is formed. Sleep, short-term memory, especially long-term memory. But the other thing is, I'm gathering that as you guys go through this hard time together, some teams really bond together and they go, look what we did and we went through. Did your team find that bonding together and now feel that much stronger for having gone through it together?
Absolutely. I used to be in law enforcement, and when you go through tough times, scary times, stressful times, that really you build a bond, even though you may be yelling at each other, and you have very stressful times. At the end of the day, I think it brought everyone closer together. But not only that, I mean, it was definitely the hardest 6 months of my career. But wow, the lessons learned. I mean, who can say they've gone through what we went through?
Yeah.
Not many, and learned a lot.
One last question, Casey. And I know this is not an easy one, but if you think through, about half of the audience today are students. They're college students, community college, four-year college from across primarily the state of North Carolina, but across the country. And you're thinking back to give them advice. You're a sophomore, junior in college. You have another year left of classes to take, lessons to learn, to shamelessly steal the ideas from your professors and those around you. What do you wish you had known back then to have helped prepare you for this day today? What could they gather and learn during their college experience that would help prepare them for this kind of a adventure?
I would just say, I mean, this is kind of a broad comment, but I've always been a task person. I just want to get things done, get things done, get things done. What are we doing by when? Who's doing it? The importance of relationships. And I found a lot of IT people, security, they enjoy sitting behind a computer, and the interaction with people is maybe not a priority or a passion. And so I think, going into this, I had built a lot of good relationships internally, and in spending time, even though I want to get stuff done, spending time on those relationships at the end of the day, when I need stuff done, you don't want to be asking when you need something. You want to already have that relationship. So I would say that was key. And I
Build that social bank account.
absolutely.
Yeah, in our new academy program, the first thing we start off with is a strength of self-mastery. If you can't manage yourself, you probably haven't earned the right to manage somebody else. And then there's the second one, the third one, the fourth one is the strength of relationships. How do you nurture and build relationships around trust, performance, and confidence? I have confidence that you're going to do what you said you were going to do. But trust is, I can feel vulnerable with you because we've been through trying times together. And I know you have the technical skills, you're going to perform. When those three things happen, it's a special time. Again, I wouldn't wish what you had gone through on anybody, but I bet for many, many years to come, you're going to go, that was a special time.
Indeed.
It was a special.
Indeed. Yeah.
Casey, thanks so much for the lessons learned today. We really, really appreciate it. And for everybody else, I want to let you know that the next speaker we have coming up at the top of the hour is Eric Gomez. Eric's one of the chief cloud security architects at Google. There's a very important message to share with us around what is it like culturally, procedurally, and technology to shift left, actually move stuff to the cloud to get stuff done better, faster, cheaper than before. Eric's been doing this for a long time, advising clients, and I'm glad that he's distilled that down into a pretty powerful presentation to give us those lessons. So Casey, again, thank you to you. We'll take a pause here for a few minutes and we'll see you at the top of the hour with Mr. Gomez.
Great.
And I want to see if anybody can notice
everyone.
the picture of Mr. Gomez in the slides that are coming up. Thanks, Casey.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.